Welcome back to Talos of Movie Reviews, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be reviewing Bird Box, which shattered a ton of records of Netflix's own site. A bunch of people watching it, a bunch of people interested in it, which is funny because taking a step back and looking at the general premise of the movie, it's not that original and it borrows from a lot of different titles, but this was able to captivate a lot of different audiences out there. So I've watched it, maybe you've watched it. If you haven't, I'll spoil the ending of this video for you. You should check it out. But either way, let's talk about it. So the vibe I definitely got from Bird Box was M. Night Shyamalan, because for one, it has a lot of similarities with his film The Happening, where you see a lot of people immediately trying to kill themselves for some reason that we can't figure out. And this film plays very, very similarly, but it adds a little bit more confusion to the mix by playing with a different sense other than sound, like you did with A Quiet Place, decent film directed by John Krasinski, and now replaces it with you can't look. As long as you're outside, you have to remain blindfolded, and this has resulted in incredibly stupid internet challenges, but creates an interesting backdrop for a survival film in a post-apocalyptic setting. We find that everyone across the world, as long as their eyes are open and are looking outside, end up killing themselves. All of their priorities go to the side, and they immediately just need to find the quickest way to end their life, which is very scary. This is very terrifying and very stressful to watch for a lot of people, but obviously a gang of survivors starts figuring this out. They stay inside, and the reason this film reminds me of M. Night Shyamalan so much is because they're very, very intentionally not showing the creatures, as they refer to them, because they want to build up suspense. They want to build up hype to what this monster, what this creature actually is. In fact, not too much of the film is dedicated to what is actually going on. There's a lot of people who are theorizing it. You know, they're saying this is the rapture, the Bible predicted this, or these are aliens that have come down and this is how they take over. They just are able to visually show us something that makes us want to die. And this opened the door for all kinds of memes I wanted to make, but don't worry, I'll stick to the review today. But I kind of like the setting and the build-up for this film. It definitely does a great job at building suspense, and what I'm proud of Bird Box for is giving you rules and parameters that you have to follow. That's typically something that annoys me in a lot of suspenseful films like this, is the rules go a certain way, but then for the sake of interest in the plot, and for the sake of our character being able to do something no one else can, they have to bend the rules a little bit, and sometimes screenwriters or movies would be like, well, this person can actually look outside, so they're the savior. But no, this film is very straightforward with its rules, and everyone has to abide by them. So it starts off with this gang of people trying to figure out what's going on, or trying to figure out if they can contact anyone and maybe see if the military's getting involved or the government's doing anything. But for the most part, you're just following the story of this group of people that are hiding inside a house. And they kind of bump up against the rules of this movie a little bit by looking through security cameras that are pointed outside. They tie the homeowner actually down so that hopefully he can't kill himself, and starts looking through the security cameras to see if he can find anything. He's like, hey, you know, I'm not technically looking outside, I'm just looking at a display which is showing outside, so maybe I'll be alright. They're a little bit skeptical of this at first, but they go ahead and go through with it, and spoilers, turns out that doesn't work. He ends up killing himself by simply being able to shake himself free of the chair and fall over and crack his head open, and boom, it didn't work. And that's how people found out that no, you cannot just simply hold cameras outside or take pictures of whatever is going on in the sky or whatever these creatures look like and expect the side effects to not bleed into you. It seems like every time this happens to someone, their eyes get heavily affected, and this definitely gives you a certain amount of like nightmare fuel, because throughout the entire movie you're trying to think, what is happening? What necessarily is going on? Particularly in scenes where they decide, you know what, we're hungry, we only have so much food here at the house, we have to go find food somewhere else. So they take the only car they have at their house and paint all the windows black so they can't see outside the car, and then are using like the car's 360-degree infrared monitoring system to make sure they don't hit anything, and they have to basically drive to the grocery store blind via GPS and just kind of make turns, and they kind of go up on the curb and they don't really know where they're going. But there's a particular scene where like a shadow passes over them and you're like, oh geez, okay, so there is some type of creature that's trying to get into the vehicle because it shakes it around a lot. They think they're not going to make it, but because they don't look outside, they make it. They get to the grocery store, and ultimately the suspense of the film keeps growing and growing and growing. I don't want to retell the plot entirely. I want to stick to kind of the bullet points here for today's review, which is that the film is really, really good at building up a universe, because not only do certain people kill themselves, certain people are dedicated to simply simply trying to make other people look. So more people start appearing in the film that appear to be normal, but then as time goes on, you find out they're crazy, and their sole purpose on the planet is to now get people who haven't looked at the sky or haven't looked at the creatures yet to go up and look at them. And this is one of really the only ways we get an idea of what these creatures look like, because there's a scene where a guy who we originally thought was normal comes into their house and they want to take care of him, but it turns out he's only there to make them all look. He takes out some papers out of his bag and you got to see some drawings of supposedly what these creatures look like, and it looks very disturbing, looks very creepy, but that's about it. And if you've already seen Bird Box, you know that by the time they get to the end of the movie, they never actually show what the creatures look like. They cannot be visually seen by the person watching the film, and I personally found it a little bit immersion breaking whenever we would have long landscape shots where we would showcase like where Sandra Bullock is with kids right now, like they're rowing down this river because they think if they go down the river they'll be safe, there will be people who can take care of them. Or we see shots of the car driving outside when they're all keeping the windows covered and making sure they don't look outside. You know, it's like we can see outside as an audience and we don't see anything that's wrong. We can't see the sky, but obviously they can't because something's there and we don't know what it is. But typically in a lot of movies, I think it's a delicate balance between not showing the monster or the creature or whatever it is that's driving the suspense and picking a slow amount of build-up to start showing it in a film. And this comes down to personal preference, but in my opinion, I'm not actually that big a fan of movies that decide to never show you the creature. Now, I can tell that this was very intentional. If this was a different cast in a Bird Box Netflix original, I would say, well, they must have had a super low budget because they couldn't even afford to animate a creature or something in the sky. But the fact that they have John Malkovich and Sandra Bullock in this film, and the fact that it's fairly high budget, like it was well done, the cinematography is excellent, the special effects are pretty decent when they're there. It seems like a very high budget film, so I don't really think I can use money as the excuse as to why they didn't want to put the creatures in the film, and they just wanted to keep it ominous, and they just wanted the creatures to kind of show up but not necessarily ever appear on screen, which means that the writers and the directors intentionally never wanted to show it. But I don't know, in my opinion, that kind of makes the end of the film a little lackluster. There's a ton of build up and you're like, what's going to happen? How is this going to play out? And what is this thing? What are these creatures? Is it an alien? Is it angels from hell? Is it God deciding to restart the earth? Like, I needed more. I kind of was very interested in the universe they were building, but I felt like they were never giving me enough information or never giving me enough attention to truly feel satisfied with the lore in the universe they were building. Now time for ultra spoilers. If you haven't had Bird Box and you're interested in watching it, please stop the video now. But the movie ends with them finally getting to this shelter, which they were told via radio that there would be people that can help them there, and there was a little closed off society that was surviving. They finally get to this shelter just in the nick of time, and the monster literally right behind them, and it's like a school of blind people. So the people who survived this apocalypse obviously are the ones who learned to live without seeing. Makes quite a lot of sense if you ask me. Yeah, it's like, okay, blind people don't look at the sky, so problem solved. But then it kind of just ends at that, and they're like, okay, we won, all done, now we can live in the blind school forever. But at the same time it ended, and I'm thinking to myself, well, what happens when they run out of food? And at the same time, this doesn't solve the bigger issue. Is the rest of society just going to live in this school for blind for the rest of their lives? The monster's still out there. The creature hasn't been defeated. Now I'm okay with the idea of an apocalyptic setting, but just singling out a couple of people in a smaller story that are taking part in a bigger event, I'm okay with that. I'm not saying you need to recreate Independence Day for how they get rid of the creatures or how they fight this problem, but I just kind of wanted a little more information on the universe, a little more visuals maybe of what the creatures actually look like, and make it as disturbing and as creepy as you can. But I think after building up for hours and hours that these creatures make you want to kill themselves and they have some type of power that they can possess over you, I think it warrants just a little bit of a reveal. Doesn't have to be much, just something at the end of the film. That's simply my personal taste. So still overall, absolutely well done production. It looked very, very dangerous for a lot of the filming stunts these characters did. Being in a canoe going through rapids with a blindfold on with children, like this looked like an intense film to make, and I think they did an an excellent job building the suspense and making everyone on edge for the entire film, but because I felt like the screenwriter walked out of the film at the end of the movie, I wouldn't give it a perfect score. So I'm gonna say if I was giving this movie a letter grade, it would be like a B-. It would be like a, this was good, but she didn't quite go the extra mile to make it great. So if you didn't care about spoilers and you stuck around for the whole video, please check out Bird Box. I think you may like it. And if you did see Bird Box, let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you all have an excellent day. Take care.